I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, roll call, please.
Robert Carnahan.
Here.
John Foreman.
Present.
Julie Rivera. Here. Randy Niemeyer.
Present.
Colleen Scheven. Here. Ralph Miller.
Present.
Richard Sharp.
Here.
I am present. Joe Moore. Present. David Austin.
Present.
We got two items, both in new business. The first is the AES proposal, and this is for soil bearings in Crystal Oak, so we could search for an alternative site for our new water tower. And we went out and met with Neil, and Randy and I went out and met with the Bakers on 2 Saturdays ago, I believe. And Neil went out and got a proposal, so maybe we could move that water tower to the side of the water tower for more convenience for them.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, we went and spoke with Mr. and Mrs. Baker and really got an idea of some of the hardship that might be created by the current location, proposed location of the tower. Looking at the park property there seemed to be some room to be able to move it slightly, one way or the other, that would actually not obstruct views or aesthetics for any of the homes. So it would kind of serve as a balancing point for everyone. The one thing we would have to look at is actually moving the park equipment in order to do that. And we asked that Neil get us a proposal for 2 alternate soil borings that could tell in those 2 alternate areas whether or not the soil will hold the tower. So that's what we're considering here tonight on this AES proposal, is those 2 alternate borings as a compromise with the neighborhood there to create a little better location that allows everybody to live with it a little bit better.
And the proposal from AES came back, and they're very reasonable. And it was $4,950, so.
And Neil had predicted it would be north of 6,000, so
Yes.
we were happy with that number.
So if we could have a motion to approve the AES proposal.
Of $4,950.
$4,950, yes, Bob.
So moved. Second that motion. Does that need to have contingencies on the additional borings or not?
That's already in there.
It's all in there,
Okay.
yeah. Roll call, Jim?
Robert Carnahan.
Yes.
John Foreman.
Yes.
Julie Rivera. Yes. Randy Niemeyer.
Yes.
Colleen Scheven. Yes. Ralph Miller.
Yes.
Richard Sharp.
Yes, thank you. The next item is water rates, and we've been working with our experts, our professionals on this, and I'll turn this over to Randy for right now.
Thank you, Rick. So last year, we started the process with the work on the system development charges. As a part of that process, we did a lot of financial homework on our utility and the health of it or lack thereof. As we submitted documents to the IURC, the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission, and the OUCC, the Office of the Utility Consumer Counselor. Part of that negotiation to get a system development charge approved was the IURC ordering that we come up with a single tariff, which means a single rate for the entirety of our water utility customers. Currently, we have about 2,000 customers. When the water utility was acquired, there were 3 separate utilities, a total of about 1,000 customers. Those 3 separate utilities all had their own rates. The IURC compelled the town for 5 years to maintain those rates. So those rates were maintained until now, about 10 years after the acquisition of the utilities. Now we're in a position where, due to this negotiation with the IURC and their order, where the single tariff is needed to fulfill our obligation to the negotiation that we agreed upon with the system development charges, as well as the rates are needed to sustain our water utility. We have a couple of choices in this whole process, and I said at last meeting, and I'll be repeating it. We can either do this ourselves and have local control of it, local access to it, and local accountability, or, as many communities have done, you can sell the water utility and you have to deal with someone else and they will do the same thing. So in my mind, it's better for us to do this with our ratepayers, with our utility, and have local control of it, rather than do this to where we sell the utility, walk away from it and say, good luck. So, because anybody who operates in water now will tell you that it's not getting cheaper to replace the old infrastructure and to provide clean water. All you have to do is reference a city north of us, Flint, Michigan, to see what the impact is when water utilities are improperly managed and the supply is tainted. It causes economic and human devastation, and it's something that no community wants to have. So these water rates take all of that into consideration. The homework that was done was extensive. Our financial advisor put a lot of time into this to make sure that the impacts felt by the ratepayers were as minimal as possible. We did some work on the minimum charges to make sure that our fixed income and low income residents have a better opportunity, that since they use less water normally anyways, that we can minimize the impact to them as well. So this was a full-scale consideration of the 2,000 plus customers that we have on our water utility, and eventually that number is going to grow. The positive information we had back in this study was that since we've grown so much as a utility due to the growth of the community, it actually helped us to ease some of that upward pressure of rates. So we will be presenting those numbers in the council meeting. And I believe in this utility board meeting, this will be considered just for a recommendation. Is that correct?
We're gonna send a favorable.
And then this transpired July 10th of 2019, and we were required to get it done before 2022, correct?
Correct. And on the track that we're on right now, it's a 300-day process with the IURC, which this will go through the IURC. This will put us into 2021, working into the 2022 budget year, so we should start to see some of those funds start to come in at about that time to be able to invest in our utility.
Anybody else, Dave, do you have anything?
This is the first rate increase to your customers and ratepayers since you've owned these utilities. There were no pass-throughs, there were no additional rates or charges to them. The system development rate charge was a cost to developers for equity buy-in that was approved by the IURC or the commission. So this is the first time we've come to our residents on this. And the language in your ordinance reflects nearly verbatim the language in the order of the IURC or the commission last July 10th, so that it's trackable for anyone who wants to read, review, and assess that, digest it. You're acting in compliance with those orders.
And one of the things we tried to do in the formulation process and communications with our financial advisor is to come up with some economies of scale, that as we grow with the rates and charges that we're proposing, if they're approved by the IURC, and these are now charged to our customers, which not every resident in town is a customer, this would give us the ability to sustain and grow the utility. So what I talked about earlier about that old infrastructure, we want to be on top of this game. We've got some aging infrastructure. I think Tim can tell you firsthand that there are some water mains out there that need some serious attention. There's also some supply issues that need consideration. So this is all part of that process of maintaining what we have and then growing to the next level. So we're really kind of optimistic that if this is approved, this will help to sustain us from now until the end of time, hopefully, to be able to provide the service. And as we grow and as time goes by, I'm sure that somewhere down the road there would be future rate considerations, but what we hope is that we set up the platform here that helps the people that follow us to be able to manage this system.
Mr. Chairman, one additional point, and as foundation to Randy's comments, this council and your predecessors have done an incredibly good job of making what Randy just said work. You have not increased or raised rates in the wastewater utility since 1998, Bob. So getting it right, getting the foundation correct, and continuing in this management mode that is in existence is critical, and you also have a historical path how you do it. And we've done it really well here at Cedar Lake for a long time.
So Rick, I'll make a motion to make a favorable recommendation to the town council for the water rate proposal.
I'll second.
Jan, roll call?
Robert Carnahan?
Yes.
John Foreman?
Yes.
Julie Rivera? Yes. Randy Neemeyer?
Yes.
Colleen Scheven? Yes. Ralph Miller?
Yes.
Richard Sharp?
Yes. Carries 7-0. Thank you, everybody. Do we have a motion for adjournment?
Just adjourn it.
Just
Go right
adjourn.
into the council meeting.
We're adjourned.
Our next meeting will be March 17th.
St. Patrick's Day.
Hand that down there.
I must have missed something.
That's when Bob's bringing cabins and cornbread.
Oh.
We'll now convene to order the town council public meeting for March 3rd, 2020. I'd like to start, we already had a pledge of allegiance, but I'd like to take a moment of silence. I drove through Nashville this morning on my way back from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. My daughter was there on a college visit to the University of Alabama, Roll Tide. But the devastation in Nashville was unbelievable. Just driving down I-65, you could see either side of the road, the amount of debris. It was a big tornado that went through there, and they're still finding bodies. So let's pray take a moment of silence and pray for the families of those who have lost loved ones and lost property. So just a
And the
moment of silence.
corona,
And also victims of the coronavirus. Thank you, Bob. You just sit
We
down.
standing or
Yeah,
not?
just sit down. Thank you, everyone. Roll call, please.
Robert Carnahan?
Here.
John Foreman?
Present.
Ralph Miller?
Present.
Colleen Scheven? Here. Richard Sharp?
Here.
Julie Rivera? Here. Randy Neemeyer?
Present.
I am present. Jill Murr? Present. David Austin?
Present.
We have a quorum. We are going to amend the agenda. Jill, you have an agenda item to add, London Witty Group.
Yes, the London Witty Group proposal engagement letter for financial advisory services.
Thank you, and this engagement letter is to fulfill some of the direction the council has given on our strategic objectives of financial analysis of our tax revenues and our miscellaneous revenues, and to put together a plan of spending of certain portions of those revenues to sustain and maintain services as our community grows. That will be added under new business, item number 7. Thank you. We have public comment on agenda items. Is there public comment on agenda items?
Not sure. I would like to make a comment on the water. Is that possible?
Is on the water?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Water
it's
situation.
it's on the
it's
agenda.
on our agenda, so step right up.
Okay. Because I've been away for a long time.
Well, welcome back, Brenda.
Yeah, glad to be back.
And you gotta state your name and address for the
Brenda
record.
Roberts, 15008 Moore Street. What I want to ask about is my Reunity property on 14908 Moore Street. Just a question, because it's new to me, that you're moving the water tower to upgrade it or update it. Will this service my area, the south of Cedar Lake and my Reunity property?
So, we're not moving the water tower, we're building a new one.
second.
Great,
So there'll be a second water
so you're
tower.
gonna build it on my property.
And it's gonna be built in Crystal Oak subdivision near Lemon Lake, because it
Okay.
has the
Oh, so
elevation.
that's too far away for us.
Well,
outside.
the plan is, we're building a water tower that would have the hydraulic abilities and the capacity to supply to our southernmost
Really?
area of town. Now, getting a water main there is about another $750,000 project.
Okay,
But it is a goal, it's part of our capital plan
Okay.
to move it there, to be able to supply the south end of town.
okay.
I can't
Well,
tell
we've
you
been talking
exactly
about
when.
that for years, but
Right,
if that happens,
but
that's
this will
great.
actually be the facilitating point to make that a possibility.
Okay, I understand. Okay, that was my question.
No problem, Brenda, thank you. Any other public comment on agenda items? Public comment on agenda items? Public comment is closed. We have our consent agenda, which is the minutes of the February 18th, 2020 meeting. Claims, all town funds, $134,385.54. Wastewater operating, $132,856.95. Water utility, $9,613.38. Stormwater, $8,018.70, and payroll for February 20 and 28 of 2020, $189,654.01. We have a request for the Business Showcase Door Prize, March 21st, 2020. Cinco de Mayo event, May 2nd and 3rd, 2020 at La Gaviota Restaurant, and the property donation acceptance, 9708 Lincoln Plaza. Is there a motion to accept and waive the reading of the minutes and accept the consent agenda as listed?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Sharp, second by Ms. Sheehan. Questions or discussion?
Yes, just a comment, in the claims, I see we just purchased about $36,000 more with salt for the roads, and I'd like to say that the street department's done a pretty good job out there for us, and you gotta keep buying that stuff.
Bob, I think it's too strong, it's ruining our roads.
You tell that to the people that are out there in other communities slipping and sliding.
Thank you, Bob. Any other questions or discussion on the motion? Roll call vote, please.
Robert Carnahan?
Yes.
John Foreman?
Yes.
Ralph Miller?
Yes.
Colleen Sheehan?
Yes.
Richard Sharp?
Yes.
Julie Rivera?
Yes.
Randy England?
Yes, motion carries 7-0. Quick report item. Final score from Hanover Central, Hanover 73, Kankakee Valley 53. So Hanover moves on to the second round of the second.
And we're hosting it for the first time.
Our 22-2 Wildcats are looking to win their second consecutive sectional title, so.
That's good stuff.
Yep, it's good news. My daughter just sent me the update. I couldn't resist. Ordinances and resolutions, item 1 is ordinance number 1348, water rates. Ms. Rivera, if you would just read the introduction, and then we will have explanations by Mr. Austin and myself, whoever else wants to chime in.
Ordinance number 1348, an ordinance of the town of Cedar Lake, Lake County, Indiana, amending town water rates and charges for the use of and services rendered by its waterworks system operated by the town of Cedar Lake Municipal Water Utility, repealing all other ordinances or parts thereof in conflict herewith, and all matters related thereto.
Thank you. Mr. Austin, I will turn the floor over to you to start.
This ordinance is before you on the orders of the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission following completion of proceedings in the town petition in 2018 and 19 for system development rate charges to be imposed and increased in your water utility. The reason for those charges had to do with identifying the proper amount of payment that should be made by developers for the connection and establishment of new subdivisions and bringing lots and new residents to the community. It was an equity buy-in, if you will. In the course of the processing of that system development rate, the town was involved in and negotiated with the Office of Utility Consumer Counselor, or the OUCC, and as a consequence of that negotiation, ultimately presented a form of agreement to the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission. In the course of that negotiation, also, the Office of Utility Consumer Counselor, or the ombudsman for the ratepayers, mandated the inclusion of terms and provisions in any future rate petition to the commission that the three tariffs that existed, the three separate rates for the three utility areas of our town, be consolidated and combined into a single tariff or a single rate. There's an order of the commission, the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission, consummating the system development charge rate. It's dated July 10th of last year, and it includes specific language for mandating within a 3-year period of July 10, 2019, that the town come back to the commission with a petition to unify those three tariffs, or those three rates. Very unusual, the law doesn't necessarily mandate that, but it was a negotiated discussion and ultimately a mandate or order of the commission that we go back. So what is before you tonight is the work efforts of your financial advisor, utility attorney in Indianapolis, your staff, and myself to bring those rates into a single tariff so that everybody's paying the same rate per thousand, and that we have a unified rate in the town. It's kind of interesting to me, and I think probably to some of you also, the town has never raised the rates in the utilities that it purchased, as we just talked about. But from Indianapolis, the OUCC sensed or divined confusion in the rate structure, which was quite interesting. As there was no evidence of rate confusion, there was no evidence of payment confusion, yet that was kind of the basis of the justification. You'll see that in the recital provisions of your ordinance, that those sentiments are identified, right or wrong, that's what happened. Attached to your ordinance is the rate study report of your financial advisors at London Whitty. This has been, as Randy reported and Rick, exhaustively examined. There have been 5 drafts of this since 2 weeks ago when we last met and told you we would be bringing this to you. So it's been worked very, very hard. We thought at one point in time in the analysis that there would be a 2-phase process. We think we're only going to need one, which is this one. So all of the work effort and massaging and studying and the analyzing has resulted in a single process and a single phase. I would defer to Rick and Randy the explanation on the tariff rates themselves, as they were directly involved with our financial advisors, and as recently as last Thursday had an exhaustive, lengthy meeting with them on this. So
I have a question for Dave. Does this have to go, it goes back to the Indiana Regulatory Commission?
yes, sir.
And then do we have to have a public hearing?
Those are 2 questions, Bob.
Okay.
Let me answer them in sequence.
All right.
Yes, we are a jurisdictional municipal water utility, and so the petition that will go to Indianapolis will result from adoption of this ordinance. Provide in this ordinance the direction to your consultants to file the petition to the commission. No, there is not required under the law a local public hearing here in town. And the reason for that is because there is a mandatory public hearing that is scheduled and prescribed by the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission. So that's where the due process is. That's an interesting point though you raised, because one of the things that's been said up here a lot is that the local control disappears. Well, we're still involved with the utility and under the jurisdiction of the commission. If we weren't within the jurisdiction of the commission, if you opted out, for example, local public hearings would be held.
And we would have saved, according to the pro forma, roughly $120,000 in fees that we have to pay to get this done.
I mean, we tried to do that a few years ago,
Yeah.
we had such resistance, we elected to stay in it, and as a municipality, we do not need to be in it. Only private entities need to be in the IURC.
There's only like 3 or 4 municipalities, I think, that are in it. Most of them have opted out of it.
But since we're in it, this is the process we have to
No
undergo.
other dictating that
Yeah.
we're pushing the direction we're being forced to push.
You inherited your jurisdictional relationship by the acquisition of the utilities. They were private utilities, but they were within the jurisdiction. So from day one of acquisition, you've been a jurisdictional entity.
So anybody that wants to object has to go to Indianapolis.
That's where the formal objections are held. There will be a proceeding, it's like a court proceeding, it's an administrative proceeding. Within a short time of filing, there'll be a pre-hearing conference, there'll be a schedule established for briefing and testimony and counter testimony and then a hearing. Public is invited, the public is offered the opportunity to participate. The town, of course, will prosecute its petition and provide testimony in support of it. At the end, after up to 300 days, there'll be a ruling or an order of the commission, just like we received last July 10th.
So to give you some highlights and maybe some lowlights of this proposal. First, the highlights. One of the things that we discussed that was of concern to us was if we are raising our rates, generating more revenue, what are some steps that we can take to mitigate what was a pretty high minimum charge? So our minimum threshold was 4,000 gallons. In the West Side Water Utility, which is the old Utilities Inc. utility, that charge was $9.01 per 1,000 gallons up to 4,000. So if you used 1 gallon, you paid $36.04. That minimum charge for the entire utility will now drop to 2,000 gallons at $10.25 per 1,000, so $20.51. And our research shows that our average customer uses about 4,700 gallons per month. But your elderly residents, your fixed income and low income people often use much less. So that gives a little bit of relief on the bottom end to that, to make sure that we're not pricing certain segments of the public out of our utility.
And snowbirds, a lot of snowbirds have contacted me, and say, why am I paying for 4,000 gallons? I'm in Arizona, or I'm in Florida.
And then you
This
say,
gives them a live in the same.
it's the cost of doing business, you know, to have the water utility, you gotta have a certain amount of revenue every month. So, going to maybe what is a low light for some, let's talk about the pro forma proposed rates, would be $10.25 per 1,000 up to the first 4,000. And then it would step down and graduate from there. The next 4,000, $8.55 per 1,000. The next 4 after that is $7.01 per 1,000, and so on. And this stuff will all be made public. Our plan is to have 1 or 2 public forums where the customers of the water utility will be invited to come and look over all this information, have access to our financial advisors and to our consultants to make sure that all of this information is transparent and that everyone has a chance to have all their questions answered. So currently in the West Side Water utility, the current charges are $9.01 per 1,000 up to the first 4,000 for $36.04. The new charge would be $10.25 per 1,000. For our East Side customers, which includes Robin's Nest and Crystal Oaks, currently the Robin's Nest customers pay $5.34 per 1,000, up to the first 4,000, and that would go again to $10.25. The Crystal Oaks customers pay $7 per 1,000, and again, up to the $10.25, so it creates a baseline rate across the board. We understand in Robin's Nest and Crystal Oaks, it looks a little more severe, but those 2 parts of our utilities were pretty bad business models to start with for us. And in order to maintain our utility in-house, that singular tariff, and also to reach the terms of the agreement with the IURC, that single tariff had to be established. So we understand that's going to put some burden on, especially on those customers, but the entirety of customers of the whole utility will be paying the same thing for the first time since we've owned it. So those are kind of the highlights of this. There are some other details with different meter size, system development charges. And there's also, we talked about the sprinkler meters as well as part of this. So there's a lot of things to go through. It's why we're gonna have a public forum. I would encourage people, when we send out those invitations to our customers, to attend, be prepared to ask questions. We understand there's gonna be some people that will probably be a little excited, and that's okay too. That's all part of the process of self-government, is we have to have those conversations from time to time. So I look forward to working with our community on this. I think it's going to be productive long-term for everyone here. And it's going to sustain our utility, allow us to grow that asset as the community grows, and create real sustainability from the utility service side of things.
But again, for Robin's Nest and for Crystal Oaks, if their minimum is 2,000, it's less money per month. Because they weren't paying 7 times $5 gallons at $28, so it's still a savings.
Right, so the minimum charge kind of addressed that thing that we really needed to address. And the growth of our utility really allowed us to do that. When we acquired the utility, we were around 1,000 customers total. We've about doubled it.
Correct.
And our utility attorney even said that he was surprised that the rate pressure wasn't higher up, because we had a pretty good year last year because of our growth. It still wasn't a year that was gonna bring us out of the red and allow us to invest into the system, but it was a year that started to point in the right direction, so we were able to formulate rates that took a little smaller bite out of it than what we thought we were originally gonna have to do.
Correct.
So you've heard the introduction of ordinance 1348, explanations. Is there a motion on this item?
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 1348.
It's a motion by Councilmember Rivera,
I'll second.
seconded by Councilmember Sheehan. Are there questions or discussion? This is a first reading. Roll call vote, please.
Robert Carnahan,
Yes.
John Foreman,
Yes.
Ralph Miller.
Yes.
Colleen Scheven.
Yes.
Richard Sharp,
Yes.
Julie Rivera,
Yes.
Randy Neemeyer.
Yes, motion carries 7-0. Dave, would it be advisable to wait until next meeting for a second reading?
I think so, given your announcements tonight and invitation to our citizens to
Okay.
meet with us.
So we will forego a second reading tonight and wait for the March 17th meeting.
Randy, would that be a good time to invite your citizens, or is it a little too short notice?
I think that what I want to have here is a
Dedicated.
forum that is dedicated to one item. And that way, we're not trying to incorporate other business and.
Yeah, then we can show what the water tower's gonna look
And-
like, we can answer
right.
all the questions.
It can be all about water, and that's all it's about, so I think that would be better.
I would agree.
Isn't this a 5 Tuesday month? Yes.
Yeah, there's March 31st is Tuesday. Yeah.
The Tuesday might be a great night.
We would have to line up schedules with our consultants and
Right.
get everybody prepared. So I would say sometime by the end of this month or into next month would be realistic. I would like to utilize our newsletter
I was just gonna say that.
to get out the word that,
Educate.
you know, if you're a water utility customer, or even send out little postcards to people who actually are water utility customers individually, so they're invited by the town. That gives everybody time to schedule things. So we'll just have to coordinate with our advisors and consultants and get everybody in a room together. All right, so there's 7-0 on that first reading, thank you. New business. Item 1 is the tourism fund request. This was deferred from February 18, 2020. Mr. Carnahan presented a question about whether the entity needs to be of nonprofit status, or it can be a for-profit business to receive these funds. Ms. Murr, would you please?
Council, I distributed information to you, which included the Indiana code reference as well as town code. There is no restriction on profit versus nonprofit. I did send them over to your attorney as well. The way I read it, it needs to bring people into your community. You want to bring people in, the tourism aspect of it, something for them to do and draw to your community, to expend those funds.
Very good. I would think farmer's market's the same exact thing as Cedar Lake Summerfest. Whether or not one's recorded as a non-for-profit or not, it doesn't really matter, because any and all proceeds above the cost line that they have to pay employees to do the work are getting paid, so.
So we have a whopping $4,725 to distribute.
That we will probably not see till June or July.
Right.
Most likely July.
Yeah, probably July before we get it, so there always seems to be a fight over this little pot of money every year, and which amazes me, but nonetheless, it's up for consideration, so what's the pleasure of the council?
I was thinking we could waive some of the Summerfest fees in lieu of giving them some of this $4,700 and change, and split the $4,700 between the Historical Association and the Farmers Market.
So last year, for reference, we waived $5,000 of security costs for the Summerfest as our contribution to their event. So it was an in-kind contribution. So are you suggesting that that be the same waiving the security costs?
Julie, if I could piggyback on what you just said, going with what John said, that he kind of thought that Summerfest and Farmers Market were kind of similar. Maybe we could waive the fees for the Farmers Market also and give the Historical Association the money, because they were gonna be bringing in that boat, they said, and doing the boat rides and that, and they were planning on doing some free boat rides for like the Boys and Girls Club and that stuff.
Joe, what
We could
kind of
support
fees
something
are
like that.
associated with the farmer's market right now?
So the farmer's market has a $150 per market fee that they pay us, up to
So how many?
40 vendors, then after that, it's an additional $10, $5 per vendor. That helps offset some of the costs, the toilet paper, the paper products that are used in the
6
trash.
weeks, 8 weeks, how many times do they come?
How many
Twice a
events?
month.
Twice a month?
Starting,
The end of May through October.
October, wasn't it, Joe?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
So
5
about
times
12 events?
10,
Would you say about 12?
I'd say 11, 1650 is what they're paying the town. If you go to 11. I doubt they go to the end of October.
Yeah, they do. They did this year.
Yes,
It's weather
they do.
dependent, right? No?
They reduced the time from 8 o'clock at night down to 7 because it was getting dark.
So Ralph, you made a proposal, is that in the form of a motion?
I'll make that in the form of a motion,
So your motion would be what?
to waive do the $5,000 Summerfest and to waive the fees for the farmer's market.
And then to allocate the entire $4,725 to the Historical Association?
Yes.
So Mr. Miller has made a motion.
Summer.
Is there a second?
Second.
The second, discussion, Jill?
Summerfest is only 4 days this year, so the cost for them was $1,000 per day, so it would only be $4,000.
Okay, I just had one question for Mr. Miller, Mr. Chairman. The waiving of the fees for the Summerfest, does that mean then that the police and fire budget considered still?
Yeah, so
That wouldn't be fair.
That's what we did last year.
that's what we did last year, it worked out.
And we waived it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
On page 8 of your packet is a summary of what we've done in the past.
Oh, okay.
Our police like the practice of the event,
Okay.
traffic control, violence control, you name it.
I just don't wanna
People-
jeopardize the budget to that, you know.
We're very well versed.
It's a great opportunity to contact the public, right? So that's Mr. Miller's proposal, is the in-kind contribution of security fees for Summerfest, the in-kind contribution of, we'll call them vendor fees for the Cedar Lake Farmers Market, and then the allocation of $4,725 to the Cedar Lake Historical Association. There was a second by Mr. Sharp. Is there any other discussion?
I have one. David, would the farmer's market agreement need to be amended then to include this? This
Probably.
waiver of the fee?
Probably,
Okay.
sentence or two.
I just wanna make
Any other questions or discussion on this? Good, I was hoping this wouldn't be a major debate. Okay, roll call vote, please.
Robert Carnahan?
Yes.
John Foreman?
Yes.
Ralph Miller?
Yes.
Colleen Scheven?
Yes.
Richard Sharp?
Yes.
Julie Rivera?
Yes.
Randy England?
Yes, motion carries 7-0. Item 2 is the NDOT project coordination contract. Ms. Murphy?
Council, one of the items, Plan Commission, Redevelopment Commission, council members have been working on was intersection improvements at 133rd Avenue and King Drive. This is directly in front of the Hanover High School. We applied for and were awarded federal funding for this project at an 80-20 split. This is the NDOT LPA project coordination contract for that project, so that we can move it forward into construction for the 2021 fiscal year. The amount of, that we are, bear with me, that is in the TIP, the Transportation Improvement Program for this, is $564,212.80. That number did not want to roll off my tongue. We have made a few modifications to the project that some of these costs may be reduced, but the town would only have to pay for 20%, which will come out of your redevelopment commission funds. Is our recommendation you approve this?
And also a note, we're working on the partnership with the Hanover Community School Corporation and the developer of Summer Winds to spread that 20% local number across 3 entities, because each entity benefits from that intersection development. Will help with traffic control for the school and the subdivision, as well as for the entire community.
Correct.
And it was going to be a 4-way stop, and it was modified to become a 3-way.
Correct.
And that reduced the cost, and it had to be reapproved by NERC, which they did, right?
That's correct.
No, this is actually approved at the higher cost. The change will come later.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, they are changing it.
Is there a motion by the council to approve the NDOT project coordination contract as recommended and presented?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Foreman, second by Mr. Carnahan. Questions or discussion? Roll call.
Robert Carnahan?
Yes.
John Foreman?
Yes.
Ralph Miller?
Yes.
Colleen Scheven?
Yes.
Richard Sharp?
Yes.
Julie Rivera?
Yes.
Randy England?
Yes, motion carries 7-0. Quick note, the RDC has been engaged in this and fully supportive all throughout the process. Number 3 is decommissioned police vehicle. I see Mr. Fisher stepping up, so the floor is
In
yours.
case you got any questions, sir. Just asking the council to decommission one of our police vehicles. It's a 2012 Dodge Charger, the 99,145 miles. It's not even being used right now. We don't even have a radio in it, simply because we don't have one. The in-car radios are about $9,000. The vehicle is just, it's on its last leg, so we want to take that vehicle and donate it to the Indiana Law Enforcement Academy, where all of our recruits go down to train for EVO training. They take the car and utilize it on the track until it's completely done. And in return, they give us credit hours for training hours. A good example of that is in 2 weeks, I'll be going down to the chief school, which is a 40-hour schooling that costs $400. But because of our training and previously turning in cars, it will cost the town of Cedar Lake nothing. So it's a good program. I contacted the lieutenant down there already to see if they were interested. He called me back faster than I thought he would. Was absolutely interested because, as you know, they're new recruits, so they're beating the cars up pretty regularly. So they have to maintain a pretty big fleet down there to utilize them. So this is a good program where they give the credit hours back to us.
So this was a 3-0 favorable recommendation from the police commission as well. So this is just to consider the decommissioning of the vehicle, not the donation, correct?
This is all of it.
All of it?
Yep, this would be the consideration, or the decommission of the vehicle and allow the clerk treasurer to turn over the vehicle and its title and everything to the Indiana Law Enforcement Academy.
So moved.
There's a motion by Mr. Carnahan,
I'll second it.
second by Mr. Miller, just for clarification, that's to mirror the recommendation of the police commission for decommissioning and donation.
Yes.
Thank you. We have a motion and second, questions or discussion? Roll call?
Robert Carnahan?
Yes.
John Foreman?
Yes.
Ralph Miller?
Yes.
Colleen Keegan?
Yes.
Richard Turk?
Yes.
Julie Rivera?
Yes.
Randy England?
Yes, motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Chief Fisher.
You're welcome.
Item 4 is Carperry, Canada. Mr. Austin.
You have before you option agreement specimen for consideration regarding your 114 acre parcel and the consequential development of an economic development agreement and business arrangement plan with your partner. I guess I kind of call him partner, Carperry Canada. So it's fairly simple in that regard. As complex as we have talked over time in the development of the terms and provisions. This is a step in the process of gathering data and meeting timelines for same.
Ms. Rivera, would you introduce it, please?
Option agreement. This option agreement, dated as March 3rd, 2020, is by and between the town of Cedar Lake, Lake County, Indiana, and Indiana Municipal Corporation, herein called the town, and Carpier Canada Industrial Park Corporation, herein called Optionee.
Thank you. And to add to this option agreement, this is the ongoing process we've been in with a potential economic development partner from Vancouver, British Columbia. Last September, I flew out there to meet with the owner and the leadership team of that company. They're interested in building a very large-scale business park on the south end of Cedar Lake that would connect to the 2 rail spurs and eventually to 41, and bring hundreds of jobs and hundreds of millions of dollars of economic development to the community. So this is the first step in that process, is a land option agreement, and we have
And it was a gentleman
milestones.
from the Indianapolis Department of, or Economic Development, right?
Right, so, yeah, a gentleman named Matt Sultanovich went with me. He's from the Indiana Economic Development Corp., so the state of Indiana is engaged in this as well. This option agreement would set some milestones of information they have to provide us within certain amounts of days, so we can have specific details to know what the benefit to the community is going to be before there's any land ever sold. So we're making sure that we do our due diligence and homework to protect the interest of the public land that's owned there by the public before there is any sort of agreement to sell land and start development. So this is us trying to do our due diligence to gather enough information to make sure that any economic development agreement that's formulated is mutually beneficial. Too many times in a lot of public-private deals, there is a lot of benefit to the private and not much to the public, so we want to make sure we're balanced in this. Is there a motion to approve the option agreement for Carperry, Canada?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Sharp, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Rivera, are there questions or discussion?
I just have a comment. So this is essentially, as you mentioned, a step in the process to further engage, to try to come up with what we think might be a good game plan to grow TIFs, to create jobs, being located this close to the state of Illinois, where we know it's not as business friendly. A business park certainly does make a lot of sense, and that is kind of the mission that we're pursuing. At the same time, to give us another leg up on funds for helping to clean the lake, an eco restoration project, et cetera.
Everything's true that you say, Don.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions or discussion? Roll call?
Robert Carnahan,
I'm gonna vote no. I heard from Dave that he had some reservations, and based on that, I'm voting no.
John Foreman,
I would vote yes.
Ralph Miller,
Yes.
Colleen Scheeben,
Yes.
Richard Sharp,
Yes.
Julie Rivera,
Yes.
Randy Neiman.
Yes, motion carries 6-1.
Mr. President,
Mr. Hudson?
John, do you want to talk about the pursuit of other land also? And directions on saying for exploration?
I absolutely would. I would like to pursue that, to move forward with the exploration of the additional parcels that we could utilize in connection with or for other purposes.
So there's other land for sale adjacent to the town-owned property, is that correct, Mr. Austin?
That's correct.
So what we would like to pursue is an option agreement on that land, if this turns into a land purchase agreement, is
That is correct, and I'd like to make that in the form of a motion.
Okay, so that, I'll add that to the agenda right here.
Okay?
Call that land option consideration for the 40-acre parcel. So you made a motion to direct the attorney to negotiate that option agreement,
That is
correct?
correct.
Motion by Mr. Foreman, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Sheehan, are there questions or discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Robert Carnahan,
Yes.
John Foreman,
Yes.
Ralph Miller,
Yes.
Colleen Scheeben,
Yes.
Richard Sharp,
Yes.
Julie Rivera,
Yes.
Randy Neiman.
Yes, motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 5, we have Lakeshore Drive incline change orders. Item A is change order 2, item B is change order 3. Ms. Murr, please tell me that we're going to be playing musical poles once again. Oh,
Don't say that, Randy. No more musical.
I keep trying to get NIPSCO to come back out and entertain us.
Change order 2 is for the amount of $4,443.51, of which we would be paying 20%. It was determined cement was to be used in lieu of lime for subgrade treatment. This was reviewed in the field. Tim has reviewed this with the engineer. This change order is recommended to be approved, as well as your change order number 3. This was for the maintenance of traffic. That was for the signage, the temporary signage, the additional signage that was requested. NDOT has approved being participatory in that request. Tim had made that recommendation to NDOT during one of our meetings, so they have agreed to participate in that. This change order is in the amount of $5,128, again, 20%. So total for both change orders, just under $1,800.
So, Jill, if there's
It's recommended to approve both of them.
there's 4,400 and 5,100, so should that increase it by 9,000, or, because we're starting with.
Overall, the increase is just over 9,000. The town's portion is only 20% of the project.
Right, but the original contract amount is the same on both change orders.
Yes, because it's falling into other items we had dropped off of the
Okay,
contract.
okay. Thank
You will
you.
have a couple more as we're continuing on with the project in the coming meetings.
Thank you. You have a recommendation from the town administrator to approve both change orders as presented. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Sharp. Mr. Miller, would you like to second?
Second.
Thank you. Questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Robert Carnahan.
Yes.
John Foreman.
Yes.
Ralph Miller.
Yes.
Colleen Scheedman.
Yes.
Richard Sharp.
Yes.
Julie Rivera.
Yes.
Randy Neiman.
Yes, motion carries 7-0. Item 6 is the Ecosystem Committee appointment. We have ad hoc committees, ecosystem restoration being one of those.
That's right.
They are not a quorum of government elected officials, so they meet as needed to discuss ideas and other things as needed. So Mr. Foreman, if you would please.
You bet. We recently had a eco restoration meeting, and it was myself, Julie, Ralph,
Dan.
and Jill was in attendance as well as Dan Pager,
Dan.
who's the representative. And in addition to him, we have an RDC member that we'd like to appoint. That person would be Doug Spencer. He brings a lot to the table. He's been involved with the CLIA. And I might also add that Bob Gross has always represented CLIA and continues to. So I just wanted to let everybody know that out of that last meeting, it was determined that perhaps bringing Doug Spencer on board from the RDC would be a great fit and an important part, especially with the relationship for the town, working through the RDC to make a lot of projects happen. So that would be my motion to make that recommendation.
I'll
Thank
second.
you, Mr. Foreman. We have a motion from Mr. Foreman, a second from Mr. Miller. Are there questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Robert Carnahan.
Yes.
John Foreman.
Yes.
Ralph Miller.
Yes.
Colleen Scheedman.
Yes.
Richard Sharp.
Yes.
Julie Rivera.
Yes.
Randy Neiman.
Yes, motion carries 7-0. We have reports, town council.
What about number 7?
I'm sorry, thank you, Bob, you reminded me. I'm just trucking right through here. We amended the agenda to consider the London Whitty Group engagement. Ms. Murr, if you would present that, please.
As you had described earlier, this is one of the strategic objectives and directives for a financial analysis, review of revenues, not limited to property tax, other miscellaneous revenues, various impacts, capital projects. The engagement is for an amount not to exceed $15,000. It will be billed at their hourly rates, which are included. It's recommended to approve this.
So the goal of this, obviously, is to give us an opportunity to really understand every working part of our business, so we can better allocate funds and better plan for things. So many times the year-to-year budget, it's not enough to think about 1 year at a time. Sometimes we really need to look out here and figure out where our opportunities are to invest public money in the right things. So that's what this plan will help us do, is to manage our financial business, which is the job of this body here, in conjunction with our clerk treasurer as the keeper of the keys. So this is what we aim to do, is to be able to guide our processes based on this analysis.
And this will also include, like if we have to have justification for increasing rates, it'll cover, London Woody would analyze that for us. Under law, we've got to have somebody to do that. Is that part of this?
That would be part of rates such as ambulance billing. Rates on utilities meet different requirements.
That's what I'm saying, like when if you want to raise the sewer bill,
Mhm.
you've got to have it
And
analyzed.
engagement agreement,
And
yes.
is that included in this?
This is just for general fund, tax
Okay.
revenues, and for miscellaneous revenues.
All right.
This has nothing to do with utilities.
All right, I didn't have a chance to look at it
That's okay.
because I just got it.
Yeah, we all just got it, but we're presenting it tonight, and I'm going to ask for consideration of it with the contingency of review by our attorney, as well as the inclusion of formal language from London Whitty Group, including their letterhead and some other things. But we wanted to get them started in the process because of the opportunities that we need to pursue as it relates to growth, especially in public safety. So is there a motion?
So moved.
I'll second Mel's
Motion by
motion.
Mr. Miller. And that's with the contingencies of review and inclusion of,
Yes.
okay, thank you.
I'll second.
John
I already
seconded.
seconded, sorry.
Would you like to third it?
I'll third it. Strong in it.
Oh, fantastic. Questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Robert Carnahan.
Yes.
John Foreman.
Yes.
Ralph Miller.
Yes.
Alan Shuvin.
Yes.
Richard Turner.
Yes.
Julia Rivera.
Yes.
Randy Engmeyer.
Yes, motion carries 7-0. Thank you for reminding me of that item, Bob. We'll now go to town council reports. We'll start with our Ecosystem Restoration Committee. Mr. Foreman, you said you had a meeting.
Yeah, we did have a meeting. We discussed various topics in that meeting. Things such as option A, plan A, some contingencies being added to the Army Corps of Engineers plan. And if and when they would accept the contingencies, moving forward with doing some of the things that we've discussed that are still being decided. All the way down to, hey, how much would it be if we wanted to do it on our own? Where could we get some money and those types of things. So we continue to pursue any and all avenues with the main priority still being the United States Army Corps of Engineer at this time. So we hope to have some further good news here on that in the next weeks and or months ahead.
To add to your report there, John, Senator Rick Niemeyer has extended the invitation that following the close of this year's legislative session for a group of us to travel to Indianapolis to meet with himself, Representative Aylesworth, and leadership teams from IDEM and IDNR to talk about some other options that we might want to explore with this project from a sustainability and cost-saving standpoint. So we'll look forward to assembling that contingency to go to Indianapolis and talk to our people there.
That'd be great. You know, we met with IDEM and IDNR probably 4 or 5 years ago. So that's great. They're pretty familiar with this project.
There seems to be more of a focus on getting it over the hump now, so I'm hoping that the parties in the room are ready to wrap their arms around something that we can all get behind and find the funding for.
Yep.
Any other ecosystem reports? Public Works and Safety. We had a meeting, when was it? Last week?
Yes,
On, was it Thursday?
on the 26th, yes.
I can never remember.
Wednesday.
Wednesday. Mr. Miller and myself were in attendance, as well as Chief Wilken and Chief Fisher. Mr. Miller, would you like to offer any reports on this?
We met with the police department and the fire department and went over some of their needs and some of the different things that were gonna be coming up in the future.
So to be specific with Chief Wilkening, we talked about, obviously, staffing's always been an issue, a turnover issue, losing staffing, which directly equates with some of what we're doing from a financial analysis standpoint of looking for ways to close the gap in competitive wages. We discussed the future need for facilities. Our community is growing, our fire department is growing, and we are about to bust out the seams of that old building, not to mention it is a building that is starting to show its age a little bit. Some renovation could be done to get us by, but we want to start looking at the long-term planning process to consider what we're going to do for the next 5 and 10 and 15 years from a facility standpoint, because some of the Band-Aids we might put on it will last for a little while, but that'll be about it. With Mr. Fisher, we discussed some of the needs for increased wages in his department. He's come up with some creative plans to address that. I've encouraged some patience in waiting for us to get through our financial analysis so we can not just plan for this year, but look at ways to continue to grow his staffing numbers as well as the wages there, and properly equip and train our personnel. We also talked about facilities with police as well. And again, it's just one of these situations, if you've been over to the CLPD, we are jammed in there pretty tight, and it's not gonna get any better. So we're hoping that some of these opportunities that we're pursuing with our own analysis, but as well as economic development partners. Part of those discussions will be facilities for town departments. So anything we do with potential partners is going to include a benefit for the public. So those are some of our goals, and hopefully within the next couple of months, we have some preliminary analysis done that we can really start the planning process in earnest and be able to start investing monies into those plans. So that was really appreciated to have those candid meetings. It's nice to be able to sit down and kind of let our shoulders down and have good, honest conversations with each other about where we need to go. Jill, do you have anything to add?
I just wanted to let you know, in my report that was distributed to you, I also took all of the strategic objectives by department and put a summary of the committee reports and their meetings in there. So that pretty much summarized public safety, other items discussed were the revenue streams on both of them, the tax streams, so that ties into that London Witty engagement agreement. We had discussed, and the report also outlines some of the tasks and timetables and deliverables. So it's all summarized for you. Some of the committees will overlap, being public safety, council affairs, or various ones, because you have just salaries tie into both with budgets and everything else. So while Public Works, we hadn't met with Tim on this one, and part of public safety, some of this evaluation will also tie in with facilities and everything else.
Thank you. Park and Recreation, was there a committee meeting?
It was not a committee meeting. The committee meeting is scheduled for April
22nd.
22nd. Thank you.
Okay, we'll look forward to a report then in May. Council Affairs Committee has not met. I believe we have.
We met on February 7th.
Did we?
Yes.
How the hell come I can't remember that?
It was a good meeting, Randy.
It was really
Good
good.
Lord, I'm overlooking
Too
information.
many meetings, Randy. Can't remember them all.
We had cake, cookies. No. That was a morning meeting. We discussed some personnel
Yes, that's right, we did.
and some salaries.
Now I remember.
Another thing though, if I could tie it into park, unless you want me to wait on my report. Soccer, one of the things we're looking at is a sponsorship program. So on the bright green piece of paper in front of you is my proposed program. Working on that with Brandon. He had been approached by a couple people about wanting to supply or provide sponsorships for the program. We came up with a couple different levels of sponsorship, and ultimately putting business names on the shirts, sponsoring the kids' shirts, various equipment. Obviously, a general donation can always be accepted as well. Putting up some signage to advertise that business. We run about 180 plus kids through the program. So
That's a lot of parents and grandparents.
A header, the name of the bronze as a header might be politically incorrect with concussions. I'm just kidding. But I didn't know a hat trick was made in soccer. I thought that was only.
We've talked about this, John.
we
did-
talked
Did you
about,
really?
I
Yeah.
talked
I
about
was being
this for a long
sarcastic.
This was a controversial item.
Yeah.
I had no,
Tourism.
I'm not a
Did
soccer.
Brandon do it, Jill?
I
Did
think it's
Brandon
good.
come up with that trick? If he came
Yes.
up with it, then I'm sure he did.
Brandon
It exists.
actually had them all just by those names, and I'm
Okay.
like, you need to give these like a bronze, silver, gold, because
Okay,
I
okay.
have no clue.
I think it's a good idea.
Various levels showing the various different sponsorships, obviously, logos and the sponsorships.
Yeah, it's a
We
great
need a
idea.
final checkup to make sure any logos are appropriate for our program. So that's another way of trying to raise some
Good idea.
additional revenues for our program.
Our street committee,
We haven't met since the last time.
okay.
We just got a report from Don about some of the stuff he's doing, so I think we need to reconvene as
So
soon
we're
as
still
we
need
can.
to add
The first half of March, he's going to have the annual plan for the roadways, I think,
Yeah. Yeah,
completed with input also from Public Works
sure.
on the little nook and cranny roads that some of the folks that came here
So it'll be a
brought
good
to our
time to
attention.
We had recommended at the meeting on January 24th to reconvene about 6 weeks, so
Next couple weeks.
we'll be reaching out in the next week to get that next meeting scheduled. So data has been going back and forth.
Planning committee, so that's our plan commission members. Are we making some progress on the?
We are,
zoning
we had some
ordinance?
discussions on the zoning ordinance at the last plan commission meeting, and, Mr. Oshman's office is working on that, and, hoping to have something to present to the plan commission here probably next month, so.
The only request I would make in public is that we have these old neighborhoods in Cedar Lake that if we put a blanket zoning ordinance together that doesn't allow overlay districts, if somebody wanted to put a gutter on their house, they wouldn't be able to in certain neighborhoods just because of some of the requirements. So I think it's important, whatever product comes out of the plan commission, that we have,
It's in our common sense, correct?
yeah, those overlay kind of grandfathering approach to some of the old neighborhoods, because they're just not laid out right to meet the modern standards.
Yeah, most of the folks on the plan commission, Rick and Bob can attest that they're all pretty much in lockstep with that
Good.
mindset.
Like in Meyer Manor and stuff, some of those are like.
Cedar Point Park, and, I mean, they're just,
There you go.
it wasn't developed how we would do it today, but it is what it is. People still live there, and they've gotta be able to live there. Town attorney.
2 items, Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
First, Councilman Sharp and I, Utility Board President Sharp and I are working on acquisition of property for the town's water utility. It's solicited your amendment of the agenda to add a direction for processing uniform land acquisition offers consistent with the discussions being had and the objective information having been obtained.
Okay, we will add that to the agenda.
I'd like to make that in the form of a motion, Mr. President.
So that's direction for the attorney to pursue the universal
Uniform,
uniform land
That's
acquisition
correct.
offer.
that is right.
Thank you. There's a motion by Mr. Foreman,
I'll second
second by Mr. Miller. Other questions or discussion?
it. Yeah, clarification, what are we saying here we're going to do?
We're going to basically look forward to asking the attorney to lend some direction on being able to create a land acquisition or possibly
John, can I help?
something directly connected to water, such as a well. How's that?
Uh,
Without giving away too
Yeah.
much.
Now you brought me up to,
Okay.
I know what you're talking
Dave?
about.
Would you care to?
John got it. Yeah. Brought it on.
I was trying not to use one particular word, but
Yeah.
We're looking to acquire water.
looking to acquire water.
Thank you.
Very simple. Any other questions or discussion? Roll call.
Robert Carnahan?
Yes.
John Foreman?
Yes.
Rob Miller?
Yes.
Alan Sheehan?
Yes.
Richard Sharp?
Yes.
Julie Rivera?
Yes.
Randy Neiman?
Yes, motion carries 7-0. Mr. Dawson, second item.
Second item, and this is primarily for Bob, on the Perry agreement, there's no downside to the town. My trepidation has to do with representing you and keeping you from being ahead of your skis. But this is a information movement agreement. There's no downside to the town. The milestones come together, everybody separates, and no out of pocket, no cost, no damage, no liability. I don't want to make that clear, Mr. President.
Thank you. Clerk treasurer.
I have completed and submitted the annual financial report for 2019. Breathe a little easier around here. Yes, I did so timely. Actually, I did so technically a day before it was due, so go me. No, everything, I'm much more confident and comfortable compared to this time last year.
This time last year.
That's what happens when you get thrown into the
I was
diving,
just
you were
starting
in the
really,
fire.
I was, yeah.
thrown
yeah,
into
it was
the
all over
diving
you.
board end.
No, it
That's
was,
what happens. You learn.
it was good, it was good. Next week, I will be attending the Indiana League of Municipal Clerks and Treasurers Institute and Academy. I received a scholarship of $150 to attend this training. This has been probably the most intense training through the ILMCT, all week long courses covering anything from tax structure to legislative processes, ADA regulations, building budgets, HR scenarios, and the ever important and growing need to watch your cybersecurity. I also received an email yesterday that I have been chosen to receive scholarship to the International Institute of Municipal Clerks Annual Conference. This one's pretty exciting to receive this one because the International Institute is divided into 11 regions, and each region only gives 2 scholarships. So I'm receiving one of those 2 for our region, and it's valued at $600. So I will be attending that conference come May. I was also awarded a $100 online learning scholarship that is also through the International Institute of Municipal Clerks. So they have a list of online courses through them, so I can choose one of those, and the $100 will go towards that. These trainings continue my professional development, so as you all know, last year I received my IAMC. I'm working towards my CMC, which is the Certified Municipal Clerk designation. But in addition, last year Indiana Code was updated, and I am now required to have so many training hours within my first year of office, and then so many hours by the end of my 3rd year. So each one of these trainings will satisfy those requirements.
Congratulations on all the grades.
Great job.
Very good, very good.
Very nice.
Town administrator?
Council, I wanted to report, the redevelopment commission awarded more facade grants. We are now up to $40,575.50 that was awarded. There were 6 applications, and $2,130 was awarded to Samuelson Lincoln Plaza, and $1,196.50 was awarded to Mr. DeYoung. Both of these on Lincoln Plaza, 133rd and H&R Block building. So more improvements and investment in our community. With the help of Chief Bill, we were able to have CPR and AED training here at Town Hall. We did 2 sessions of it. So Town Hall staff, majority of us, of them, I should say, I was unable to make it, were certified and are certified in CPR. So this also includes our park and rec coordinator as well. Reminder, tomorrow Town Hall will be closed from 8 to 12:30 for the active shooter training that we will be doing. Census Committee will be meeting March 11th at 7 p.m. Grant training, my administrative assistant will be attending a grant writing training that will be able to assist other departments with writing grants. And that is all I have right now.
Thank you. Director of Operations.
Just one thing, I mean, we're working on trying to get a game plan together for like the Noble Oaks and the people on the west side of 41. Try to do something with those roads as soon as the weather breaks to make them a little more bearable, so. What we're gonna do at this point, we're kind of coming up with a couple of options, but we're trying to get that taken care of as soon as possible for the, especially the people that come in here to, you know, the few items that were brought to the top of the list, so. We're trying to establish a game plan to get that done ASAP, so.
Awesome. Thank you. Chief Fisher?
Just a few items for you guys. Just kind of briefly talked about, start off with this one here. After I took office as the chief, we were looking at our budget and what we could do to try to help with the issue of raises within the town. We know that it's an ongoing battle. Last year, we were approved a new officer above and beyond what we currently have. And so we sat down and talked as an administration and believe that maybe taking these funds, instead of a new officer this year, and increasing the salaries of the officers to get us closer to the middle of the pack was the smarter idea at this particular time. So I sat down with the clerk treasurer and the deputy clerk, had a really good discussion with them about it, looked at the funds, and what you guys can see there on my page up here. What you can see on page 2 there, the front page is just the recommendation from the police commission. On a 3-0 vote, they were very excited about it, to accept this and to bring it to you guys. But on page 2 there, the very top of it shows our budgeted salary for the year. The second number there, right underneath, is the current salary, including the replacement of Chief Colson when he left. With the leftover amount just below that, which would have been for the new police officer to be hired on this year. Instead, what I like to do is add $3,000 to each one of my officers' salaries to increase their salary. You can see that is in the second section right there, the current budget and the addition of that salary, still leaving a pretty substantial amount of money in the budget that will be turned back over or looked for in the future to be used elsewhere. This will include all officers on the department except myself. I'm not gonna take a raise, I just got one this year when I got promoted, so I don't need one, but my guys do. If you can look down at the bottom, the last 2 boxes, you can see what their salaries will be increased to. It doesn't bring us up to the middle, which is what we're trying to do, but it gets us a lot closer and it starts us there. And as you can see, with I think we're missing 2 departments on there, but as you can see, the town of Cedar Lake is at the bottom. So this will bring us up closer, still gonna keep us at the bottom, but it's a start. And I know that you guys are looking at some financial companies to help look at sustainability, but we're foregoing the officer this year instead to increase the salaries a little bit. So I'm looking for a favorable recommendation from the council to get this started. Hopefully with the second reading by the end of the month. We discussed it and the salary can take effect by the end of the month.
Will that benefit retirees? Because
Yes.
so like Jim Hunley, who's always asking me about
Yes.
money.
Yeah, we currently have 4 people on the town's retirement. After that, these 4 that are left, after they're done with their retirement, everybody else is downstate. We actually had our meeting today. So, yeah, it would affect Chief Hunley's salary, yes. It'll affect Lynn's salary as well.
And 2 others?
Yeah, Chief Cowder and Connie Graw with her, I don't know if it'll benefit hers. Not Cowder. Just Hunley and. So I was hoping to get a,
So what we would need to do internally then would be to amend the salary ordinance, correct? In order for this to be considered?
Yes.
So before we would want to do that, we would want to get some direction from the council to do that. So I would add this to the agenda tonight for consideration of taking the favorable recommendation of the police commission as well as the chief's recommendation to consider this as a item for direction to amend the salary ordinance to reflect the chief's data here. So is there a motion on the table to approve the direction?
I would make a motion to that effect for the direction to amend the salary ordinance for the police department.
I'll second.
There's a motion by Mr. Foreman. I heard Mr. Carnahan's first, so I'm not trying to exclude you, Calvin. It's my right ear, I think it's a little better. Questions or discussion? I have just some points here. One of the things, Bill, in foregoing another officer, does this make our community safer or less safe? Does it help your department subtract from it?
I don't believe so. I think obviously we can always use more officers. That's never going to go away. But we're gonna continue to lose officers. As you can see, the salary being as low as it is. Multiple guys have put in applications elsewhere simply because they can make more money. I mean, they could go south and, as you'll see in a few minutes, take a lot less calls and make $5,000 more a year. So I know it's a difficult topic, and I'm sure you guys will talk about it every year. I know that Chief Wilkening talks about it with his staff and is very well needed. But I think that this is a better use of our money than, as of right now, to increase that amount and to show my guys that you guys are striving really hard. We found it within our budget, instead of foregoing that new officer, and then once we get the feasibility study that you're proposing that we talked about, we can look for other avenues or more raises.
So what I expressed to you in our committee meeting was, the goal that I have in mind is to get us in that range where Highland and Crown Point are in that $64,000 range for a first-class patrolman, but then to still add personnel to the department.
Sure.
And I wonder out loud, and I can't tell you what the impact will be, is that, okay, so since we're switching some things around this year and foregoing an officer, is that going to double the need of staffing? So let's say we build 250 homes this year, which is a possibility, 250 next year, and that's another 2,000 people added to our community. In 5 years from now, we're up another 5,000 or 6,000 people in our community. So that's how my mind works in this bill, is by foregoing personnel.
It's only this year though.
Right, but it might affect next year, and it might affect 2 years from now, because there will always be one guy behind.
But another way, Randy, to look at this is if we start losing a lot of officers and we're at the bottom of the heap, then we're going to have to be sending people down state to be trained, and that's going to take more people off the roads.
I don't disagree with you, and that's why we engaged with London Witty tonight, was to see if we could do something midway through the year where we could responsibly invest some of those miscellaneous revenues back into our public safety to close the rest of the year gap and still be able to meet our personnel goals. So that was kind of the thought that I had, was to, I mean, it's a council decision. I'm just expressing my opinion. I like what Bill's doing in the budget creativity. I agree with him 100% that our officers need to be more competitive on pay. I think we need to be more competitive and have a plan to get there and still grow our department, because I think our population growth is gonna put some pressure. And another thing is, let's say you got one or two guys that get injured or sick, they're on FMLA. I mean, I don't know, I guess personnel to me is the number of people is most important. I understand that people put in applications in other places. And Todd goes through the same thing and has higher turnover, but we still seem to have a full roster, you know.
Yeah, but even in Todd's case, it's a never-ending training cycle, or, I mean,
understand.
every month he's bringing somebody up here, and I don't wanna be that with you guys. I wanna sustain our officers, keep the ones that are really good, the ones that are doing really good, that are getting extra training, that are bringing it back to the community, and this is a way to do that. It's similar to Chief Wilkening's issue with the paramedics and that, where, they're getting their experience here and then boom, they're taking off. I don't wanna get to that point with my department.
I agree.
And that's why we sat down as a department and administration and said, you know what, this would be better off this year. It doesn't get us to the middle, but it's a start. It's a minimal, it's something. It shows my guys, hey, we're trying, we're really trying, and it won't affect the budget whatsoever. All it does is
It might not
come from
affect
the
the
same,
budget, but it
same
may
line.
affect our ability to grow the roster. That's all I'm
So
saying.
Randy, are you saying it's better to, I already made the motion to
No,
make this.
and that's why we're having this discussion.
But are you saying though that you would prefer him wait for your other safety committee plan? Or,
This was
I
a
mean, this money's already in his budget, it's already
Understood.
there, earmarked, he's foregoing a person.
But the plan was to add a person, and now we're subtracting a person.
Right.
So that's all I'm saying is in thinking about this out loud here, which is what we're supposed to do,
Right.
is that is always gonna put us -1. So next year, if we add one person, we could have been +2. But if we wait and we have a plan to sustain that, to meet the goals that the chief has for wages, as well as continue the growth in the roster, That's all I'm waiting
Right.
to consider. And
Well, I
like
think
said,
we're
it's-
gonna still absolutely have to come up with a way to add another officer next year.
Right.
Well,
Just based
well,
on
as
what's
you know, we already have the
happening.
COPS grant, we've put in for the COPS grant, which is going to save the town quite a bit of money over 3 years. The total cost would be somewhere in the area of about $140,000, that we would have to come up with instead of $270,000, that a normal officer would, you know, with all of his equipment and stuff. So we put in for the COPS grant this year, doesn't mean that we'll get it, and even if we do, it would be the end of the year.
And we've got one of those before, and I believe it was Solsky that was brought on with the COPS grant that we got before.
Sure, we've actually
The
attained
last
3
one.
officers
How
with
long
it.
does the COPS grant last?
The newest
3 years?
one is a 3-year,
Three years.
yeah.
But then at the end of that 3 years,
We
we
have
have
to
to have a sustainability plan, and that's all I'm preaching here, is that
Right.
we need to consider things in a sustainable fashion. So we're not just addressing year to year to year or day to day, that we're looking at a bigger picture. And, I mean, you made the motion, Bob seconded it, and that's why we're having the discussion, is, those are my thoughts on it, is that, an approach of prudence and patience can get us more of what we need than what we want right now.
Fair enough.
I agree with Chief that the wages need to be higher, I'll never argue that point. It's just how to get there and then sustain it,
Fair enough.
it's just a different pathway, I guess.
Okay.
So there's a motion second on the floor, any other questions?
Is this just a one-time deal?
Yes, sir.
Just this year?
No, it would actually raise the salary.
No, I
Yeah, it's not
understand.
going backward, they're not losing $3,000 next year.
It's not a stipend.
No, I know they're not going back.
Mhm.
But we're not gonna do the same thing next year.
For raises?
Yes.
Well,
Not in this fashion.
not in this fashion, no.
No, I know we're gonna
No.
have raises.
I wasn't, I'll be honest with you, I wasn't involved in the addition of the officer other than conversation at the police side. I didn't know about it actually until I was getting ready to take office. And that's when we sat down and talked about it. That's when I sat down and talked about talked with the clerk. And I said, you know, it would be nice to get that new officer, but we really need to raise the money. It's very important, so.
It's your pot of money, and when it's gone, it's gone. But if you think
Amen.
you're pulling off, you're
I can tell you, I'm
And-
very adamant on the budget.
in the future, though, we have to still have a person.
Sure, I understand that. I watch my budget really strong. I mean, the clerk brought it in at our meeting. I used 98.2% of the budget last year. So I'm trying to stay right on key all the time. You can ask her, I bug the heck out of her, make sure I'm doing it right. So,
It is his pot of money, but it's still our job to make sure that the public is safe,
Fair,
so.
fair.
the public,
Call for the question.
Mr. President, the public's not
The
gonna, we're gonna be
the
safe.
question has been called. Roll call vote, please.
Robert Conaghan.
Yes.
John Foreman.
Yes.
Ralph Miller.
Yes.
Colleen Scheven.
Yes.
Richard Sharp.
Yes.
Julie Rivera.
Yes.
Randy Niemeyer.
No, I'd rather us wait till July, but it's okay. 6-1 carries. Direction is
Salary
to
ordinance.
amend the salary ordinance.
I'll have that on your agenda for next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any other reports?
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Fisher.
The last one here is our end of the year report from last year. We're also putting it up on the screen for you. Finally got it together. Welcome, sir. As you can see, last year we did a total of 11,464 calls for service, on the top screen there. They're broken down into categories. Incidents assisting other agencies, particularly fire EMS, we had 881. Related citizen assist was 2,500. Juveniles was 60, but you can see the majority of our calls is about 5,300 in traffic related, where there's citations or warnings issued. So having those young officers out there on the road, slowing people down, works out really good. It's broken down into demographics for you, whether it's for the warnings and citations. And then incidents by nature, which was also broken down from 2015 to 2019. If I direct you to page 6, on page 6 is the final numbers at the end. And you can see the total calls for service actually went down a little bit for our officers. although our numbers increased, and that was because of the amount of traffic stops the officers were making. So it was self-initiated field activity. It's a little page, it looks kind of like this.
Yep.
So you can see the calls for service went down, which is a good thing. I think that is directly related to the amount of traffic stops that they're making. The public sees the lights out there and the people slowing down, and hopefully causes the criminals to move to a different location. And then incidents are broken down with some graphs for you guys to take a look at.
Any questions for Chief Fisher?
No, good job, Bill, looks good, thanks.
I have a question.
Sir?
Narcotics investigations.
Yes, sir.
I see one for 2018, one for 2019.
That's because they may not have been coded as narcotics or drug related, or there's multiple codes in the Spillman for the same thing.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with the town of Cedar Lake. It has to do with the dispatch center and how they code it. So we
this
could have had
is
a
all
drug,
taken-
we could have a drug arrest, or it could have been a DUI that was a drug
So
arrest.
these are all taken from the statistics generated by the dispatch system.
Yeah, that's correct, from Spillman.
So drugs could cover a multitude of things as it relates to drugs, so 68 this year, 55 last year.
Mhm.
Okay. I just want to make sure we maintain some proactivity in that segment, because that problem is not getting any less, especially now with the wackos in Illinois with their legalizing of marijuana before they've thought of any of the other plans.
Correct.
So,
And the coroner said there were 18 overdoses over the weekend, I think.
yeah, it's not getting any better.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of.
You know, I heard a real interesting statistic that I'll share with you, Chief.
In
is
February?
In California, since they've legalized marijuana,
Mhm.
that the illegal sales of marijuana has tripled.
Is that right?
The reason why is because the state of California taxes the legal marijuana so much, what people do is they go and get their legal marijuana containers,
Mhm.
and then they go buy illegal weed from the local drug dealer and put it in there.
I'm sure they do.
So they've actually created more illegal drug dealers in California by legalizing the weed, so brilliant, brilliant setup when government is in the drug dealing business.
It's unfortunate, isn't it?
Yeah.
The last thing that I have for you, I'm gonna actually bring them up now. Jose, you wanna come up?
Sure.
Jose Gutierrez, did I say that right?
Pretty good.
Okay.
Thank
He's
you
the-
for your patience, by the way, as getting through our meeting.
He's the owner-operator for McDonald's, and I'll let him speak. I
So-
think- I forgot your name.
Dennis. So I'll have Dennis pass some of these flyers. So I wanted to come in and introduce myself. I'm the new owner of the McDonald's here, and my family purchased 3 additional ones in the area. We're committed to not only being here for the long haul, but also being involved in the community. We've been working very hard to bring this restaurant back like it should be, so we've been investing a lot of it. So we're not at a good point, we've replaced a lot of the equipment, and we're starting to get involved. And one of the first events we're going to be involved with is what you have in front of you, that flyer, which is about a great public relations opportunity for us to bring the police in the community, and we'll give some free coffee and cocoa to anyone who wants to come in. So we'll be publicizing this at a restaurant to make sure that people can come in and speak with our law enforcement in a nice, comfortable way. We've done this many places. I've worked for the McDonald's Corporation before, and I've trained for several years in preparation, so I got a chance to see these, and I'm excited that we're going to kick this off. But we're also doing quite a few other events. We've joined the Chamber of Commerce. We're going to be doing events coming up here, like, for example, we'll be
The
doing-
showcase?
The showcase will be involved in that. We'll also be doing some like teachers' nights where we will work with the local schools. We have one coming up here in April, where we will be partnering with the schools and giving a percentage of all the sales to the local schools, whoever wants to come in. We'll also be giving away different ice cream, different events, in order to be not only to increase sales, but also to be a responsible citizen and help in the community. So if you guys know of any local organization that wants to raise money, we'll be more than happy to sponsor them or consider them, or if they want to do that. Census, we also joined the St. John's Chamber of Commerce, and they brought to our attention that they wanted our restaurants to use the placemats, and more than happy to do so. So
All
if
right.
you,
Let me tell you, this is the town doing this.
yes.
And we got these in almost every restaurant in town. And they were waiting on you to approve putting those in your town, in your restaurant there. And also, I'll give you a little bit of history about the McDonald's here in Cedar Lake. March of 1994, I cut the ribbons for the grand opening of that facility, and there were $300 on that ribbon, and those $300 went to the Boys and Girls Club.
Oh, wow. I've had the opportunity to meet some of the previous owners, and I know there's been some change, so.
This gentleman here is Mr. Census. You
So-
will have these in your restaurant.
And Mr. Gutierrez, he drinks a lot of hot chocolate, so you might have made a mistake.
Come on down. You know, I'm gonna pass my business card around. Feel free to reach out. Like I said, you know, we're here, we're committed for the long haul, and we're very fortunate to be here. So whatever we can do to help, feel free to reach out, okay?
Thank you.
I've got one other thing to say. At that grand opening, Bob may have been the person who cut the ribbon, but I am the person who walked away with the money. They made, Mr. Modrak, the Modrak family was very involved with us, and they helped us set that up. And they were very supportive of the people that opened up that McDonald's, and they were a great friend of the Boys and Girls Club. They, we used to do a pancake breakfast, and they would donate quite a bit of product in that.
Let us know how we can help. We want to be here as a good, responsible. I've served in many community boards, museum boards, and I look forward to.
How many McDonald's do you own total?
Four McDonald's.
Do you own the St. John one that I think?
Yes, yes. St. John, Cedar Lake, Sherville, and Sauk Village.
Awesome.
Well, welcome to Cedar Lake, and we're happy to have you as a part of our family here, so we hope you find this to be a very good community and productive for your business.
It's been a great opportunity, and the folks have welcomed us, and our employees are very excited with all the changes, so we look forward to continuing partnering.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I sent you all an email today about this.
Yeah.
You should have got it, so if anybody's available, it's 10:30 to 11:30, next Wednesday. So I'll have quite a few officers there serving hot cocoa and coffee and, talking with the public. We'll, the whole administration staff will be there as well, so if you're available, swing by.
Appreciate the public outreach efforts.
Yes.
Chief. That's-
We have,
Thank you.
actually, I got better information. So we actually have a training class that we're gonna have on May 15th. The Hanover Township trustees, that the assistant U.S. attorney is gonna come in and do a class with the elderly, or those that are older about scams, whether it's phone scams, IRS scams. Unfortunately, she couldn't do it any sooner than that, but it actually worked out because he wanted to do it in May anyway. She's got a trial that's going through it. So I reached out to them, and they're very excited about that, so.
That's awesome. Great work.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Fire Department, Chief Wilkning.
I have a few things tonight, Council, for you. The first thing I'd like to talk about is a conversation I had with the trustee, Kevin Toth, who's in the audience tonight, in reference to helping us with a project of your extractor, as far as extracting the hydrocarbons off the firefighters' gear. In a discussion with him, his board, and he committed to helping us with the project based upon as long as it went through the proper channels of the town. We did have the discussion at the Public Safety Board meeting in reference to it, and I would like the council to help support this project to get this thing off the ground and start the dialogue with the trustee's office to help our fire department with this project.
Chief, may I address the trustee, please?
Sure.
Kevin, what sort of direction are you looking for from us?
It's just that if, well, at our last board meeting, the board wanted to make sure that things went through proper channels, and in other words, went through the council. So that if there was a request made of us for something for the town fire department, we contract with you, So
it'd be formalizing the request?
Yes.
Okay.
And understand, and then just part of some of the requests you gotta understand too, and I think we did email a little bit back and forth with that. There are certain things that legally I cannot pay for. for the town. So if there's like, if it's something to retrofit, like a town-to-town building to put the washer and dryer in, I cannot legally pay for that. I can pay for the machines as long as we retain ownership of them under the township. So those things have to be just kind of ironed out before we do anything.
So tonight for consideration on the agenda would be formalizing a request to the township trustee for the purchase of the washer and dryer as presented by Chief Wilkie. So that's the agenda item. Is there a motion to formalize that request?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Foreman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Sharp. Are there questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Robert Carnahan?
Yes.
Ron Forman?
Yes.
Ralph Miller?
Yes.
Colleen Sheehan?
Yes.
Richard Sharp?
Yes.
Julie Rivera?
Yes.
Randy England?
Yes, motion carries 7-0. Town administrator, would you formulate a very short letter that memorializes this request with specific details from the chief of what the request is that includes the dollar amount? Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate your support.
Thanks,
Also
Kevin.
the council.
Appreciate it.
In reference to that as well, the Volunteer Firefighters Association decided to donate money to the retrofit process of that for the fire station as well. So we got funding from them as well, which is an additional, I don't remember, $4,000 or $5,000.
Great.
In which they raised the money for. Well, the second thing is our new hire from the fire department that we were going to hire backed out, and we made a conditional offer to a firefighter from Munster who's also an EMT paramedic student. His name is John Smith. I was under the impression that when we budget for a new full-time person, that we had to hire the full-time person. I was not aware of the fact that we could take that funding and give it raises to firefighters. So in the future, I'd like to explore that as well. I commend Chief Fisher for looking out for his people, but I would like to have that same opportunity. The third thing is very good news is we had no ice rescue or no ice racing incidents this year due to the fact that we didn't have an ice race. No medical calls, no standbys. It still did cost us some money because we had to budget people to be there. But, you know, the good thing is nobody got hurt, and I gotta be honest, if I don't ever see ice go across that lake ever again, it's too soon. Because it's scary, because we have incidents every single year, so. I'll have John Smith, I know it sounds like I'm making this guy up. He's an actual real person, he'll be here.
I'll remember his name.
After he gets through the perk process for your swearing in, so, thank you for the night, thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
You skipped the town council.
I was gonna go to that now.
All right.
Rob, I know that you have voluminous reports about the census, but go ahead.
March 12th, you're gonna get a postcard in the mail, and you can either, it'll have a number on there, and you can take that number, and it represents the house you live in, and you can fill it out online this time, or you can call a phone number, or you can do it, file a hard copy. I've told many of you in the past, the town of Cedar Lake only got 80% of the people to fill out the forms. 20% didn't fill them out. We lost $20 million. What we could have done with that money. April 1st is Census Day. I hope we do better than 80%. If we don't have a normal average of the rest of the United States, we could lose a United States congressman. We lost 2 of them in 2000. There is $675 billion available. I want Cedar Lake to get every penny they deserve, so that we can maybe hire some more firefighters and police officers and do some more road work and stuff like that. If you don't fill it out, after April 1st, April 2nd, they will be sending you a hard copy to fill out. And then, if they don't hear from you between April 2nd and July, they're gonna come and knock on your door 3 times. And if you don't respond, we've lost that money. It's very important. And our committee has been out there spreading the word. We've got these placemats in restaurants, in bars, and everywhere. I've got some back there, so if you haven't seen one, pick it up and take it with you. But please, spread the word. Let's get these people to fill out these census forms.
Good job, Bob.
Excellent work, Bob. Any other council reports?
Business showcase, already mentioned, March 21st, 11 to 3.
Thank you, Bob. We're gonna have to give you an infomercial section. Okay, so we have the Christopher Burke Engineering Report.
Most items were reported on as part of your strategic objectives and committee reports. Don's working on those, street committee items, redevelopment commission, the 133rd and King Drive intersection improvement, as well as various plan commission items and as-built reviews.
The 129th from Parish to 141. I'm getting complaints all the time on that one, and it mentions that in the, what is our process, where does it stand right now?
The 129th one, that's gonna have to go through the street committee for the.
Couple weeks, you'll have some answers.
That one's pretty close to design. They're looking at some other newer options for.
Okay, so now we have open public comment. Anything you want to talk about? Except none of us but Julie are counselors, so
Okay.
we can't help you with that.
That's right.
Ken Puent, 13641 Morse Street. Just given Chief Fisher's numbers of approximately 60% of what I read on the graph that was projected is either ordinance violations or some kind of traffic citations or warnings and things like that. Does that lead you with 60% of that being tied up in that direction toward discussing the efficacy of a municipal court?
You know, one of the things that, like, sometimes people think when we write tickets that the town makes money off of it.
No, I know you don't,
But
but I
actually,
realize
it
it almost
costs
the
us money
state
for every
fees.
ticket that's written, so
Okay.
trying to establish a municipal court from scratch would be very, very difficult from a cost standpoint. Dave could probably speak better than that.
They're all shutting down.
Are they?
By virtue
We're
of.
consolidating into bigger courts.
Whiting traffic court closed down, the Hammond City traffic court is closed down.
Wow. Okay.
And there were big numbers in those places, volume wise.
And Lowell's no better than break even. No better than,
Yeah.
they're talking about.
Lowell's actually subsidizing their town.
Are they?
They're actually subsidizing, so.
Okay.
it still exists.
No, it's a good idea, but that's.
No, it doesn't sound like it is.
Just what the numbers.
Right, okay, thank you.
Thanks, Pastor Ken. Any other public comment? Any other public comment, third and final call? Well, thank you everyone for attending tonight and listening to our, turned out to be a long meeting. And our next town council public meeting will be Tuesday, March 17th at 7 PM, or as close as we can get it to 7 PM because we do have a utility board meeting at 6:30. So with that, this meeting is adjourned.
Okey-dokey. Oh, I don't think I can move.